Folks, welcome to the Draft Deeper podcast. I am this week's lead host, Maxwell Baumbach. Nathan Grubel not joining us this week. We're hoping to get him back in the saddle very soon, however. As always, our producer is Kevin Black, and I am joined by Draft Deeper's own Stephen Gillespie. Stephen, how are you doing tonight?
Maxwell, I'm doing great, man. People probably hear a little bit difference in my voice. I'm recording at a new location today. Luckily, I was displaced from where I was staying, so I got some friends that were nice enough to let me crash their place and podcast here. So coming to you live from Jacksonville, Florida today. So if
Nice.
I sound different, it's just I'm a little bit further south than where I'm normally recording. So
hey, there we go. And this week, we're going to be talking about international players. We're continuing our preview series. If you've missed out on these previous episodes, make sure to go check them out. And also up top, make sure you go to NoCeilingsNBA.com, subscribe to the Substack. If you're listening to this podcast, subscribe to this podcast, and also rate and review on the podcast app of your choice. It helps us a lot as far as people discovering our shows. We've got good, fresh content coming to you every single day. So make sure you're subscribed and getting the No Ceilings content in your ears. So let's get to the man everyone wants to hear us talk about. We're doing international prospects this week, and we are touching on the number one player on my big board, the number one player on the No Ceilings consensus big board, and the number two player on Stephen Gillespie's big board. We're talking about Victor Wembanyama, currently playing for Metropolitans 92 in France. He was kind of the presumptive number one pick coming into this class through, I believe it's first 10 games of his season in the LNB league in France. He's averaging 25.4 points per game, 8.2 rebounds per game, 2.3 assists, 3.3 blocks, 1.1 steals, shooting splits of 51.2% from the field, 37.5% from three, and 77.8 from the free throw line. It's 7'4" with an 8-foot wingspan. This is just unbelievable stuff. I couldn't be more excited about Victor. His shot making profile is unbelievable. His jump shot is unblockable. He's been more willing to attack and get downhill. He's hitting even more difficult shots than he'd even taken in the past. His touch over the top is unbelievable. He's a monster shot blocker one-on-one when guys, especially when guys try to take him on the block, even though his strength isn't all the way there yet. He's talking more on offense and guiding players through actions off the ball. He's got sharp recognition, forcing turnovers with pokeways on defense. Just a truly fascinating player. Stephen, how have you felt about Victor's performance so far that we've seen?
I mean, I've said it when comparing the Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson debate is that Victor is unlike anything that we've ever seen. Like even our prospect chemistry that we laid forth in the preseason draft guide, there's a lot of like Dirk Nowitzki, like a lot of
I had to come up with that stuff, and I just threw like KD, Dirk, and like Miles Turner because I was just like, I don't know, I like a little bit of all these guys, I guess.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that even the right way to classify him though? Like one
Probably
player
not.
comp that I have is like 7'4". I was like kind of stretching him out a little bit as if he needs my help, but I was saying on Twitter he's 7'6" Jason Tatum. Like, do we need to just start looking at this guy as a wing prospect? Because if you look at everything that he's so good at, and we're criticizing him on his strength, even though it doesn't seem to have really hampered him that much this year. He's just phenomenal, man. Like he's making it really hard for me to keep him as my number two prospect. As much as I love Scoot Henderson, I really need to kind of evaluate my pride and see if it's just me being stubborn or not, because the stuff that he's doing, Maxwell, you just mentioned the stuff that he's trying in games, like one-legged, just pull up jump shots from the arc. It's stupid. He shouldn't be able to do that type of stuff.
Well, and the one-legged three. So coming into the season, I had Victor 1, and it was not by much. Like it was like him and Scoot neck and neck. Honestly, I think just because Victor is so odd, I'd kind of hope that Scoot would just run away with it, because it would be so much easier to be like, this is a type of player we've seen before. I can feel more comfortable like attaching my cart to him and just let him do his thing. Victor like took a lot of just tough shots that you didn't really need to take in the past. And he's gotten way better about that. Like he's really cleaned it up as the number one option, which is kind of surprising. Like you think it would be the opposite, but he's done a good job of reeling that in. But like you mentioned the one-legged three, and he took one of those early in the season and it was a bad miss. And I was like, that's the kind of stuff I want to see him get rid of. And then he hits one in a game and it's like, all right, well, maybe this is just like a weird way to disguise a three that we've just never seen before that he's able to do because he's 7'4", and that's just something that's an option for him now.
Yeah, and I mean he's hugging the line when he's doing that. It's not like he's at half court. I mean, we've seen guys like Kristaps Porzingis take a flat-footed three-point shot, like, you know, just inside the half court line. So it's the fact that he's so close. It's really no different than like you and I on like the elbow, you know, doing like a little fall, then a little fall away jump shot, except he's kind of leading into it. So for him at his size, it just kind of works. And the stuff that he's trying, man, it's ridiculous. He uses his length so well. And I think that what's scary when evaluating him is that we're not looking, his Dragon Balls is not reached his final form yet, you know? So he's going to get stronger. And that strength is going to play into his interior game, his help defense, even his straight up post defense, perimeter defense, not, you know, getting bumped off or being hip check or, you know, having a shoulder dropped into him on a drive. It's going to help him out in so many areas, but, there are questions, and I think that even the most enthusiastic Victor Wembanyama fans see that there are areas for him to improve in. But like earlier in the offseason, you know, Corey from No Ceilings laid out that when he went and watched LeBron James, you know, one of, if not the best high school prospect ever, he was like, wow, kind of nostalgia plays and recency bias plays into your recollection of how good of a player he was in high school, because you got to remember that these guys are still kids and they got a long way to go, even at their absolute best relative to their peers.
Yeah, well, like even rookie LeBron, like because LeBron has been so productive his entire career, I think people overlook the fact that like as a rookie, LeBron struggled as a jump shooter. He struggled at the rim. And like if these things happen with Victor, it's important to remember like we can't just be, well, LeBron was always dominant. It's like, well, he was always really good, but like we tend to just view the past player as the player they are now, no matter what. And that even happens to the guys like Russell Westbrook, like guys who are struggling recently. And people are like, oh, he shouldn't have won that MVP. And it's like, well, maybe, but like at the time, he was a lot better than he is now. So Victor, like you touch on the improvement areas, and I think I'm like really blown away by how much he's improved already, which has me really optimistic. Like, I think coming into the year, if Victor had been like, so right now he's at like 24, 7-2, like roughly stats wise. If he had been terrible, like, just if he'd been like 15, 6.5 and like 1 and like 2 blocks, and he was shooting like 45, 28, 70, I think he probably still would have been number one on my board, just based on like the size, the flashes, like the weird stuff he can do. Because I feel like he's been so dominant this year that we forget how kind of just not good he was in the LNB last year. Like he wasn't super productive. And looking at how far he's come, like the efficiency is already way better. So that has me optimistic. But I think the biggest thing for me that I want to see him improve is his playmaking for others. Because he's going to draw a lot of attention. He's going to draw a lot of doubles. And the thing we talked about with Scoot Henderson last week is like he's just so good at leveraging the motion that he forces the defense to do. He forces rotations, he forces scrambles, and he has a phenomenal understanding of like, hey, when this guy comes from here, then this pass is opened up. Or because this guy came from over here, this other defender is going to go this way, and then I'm going to hit that man. Like he's just really on top of that. And Victor, I think that stuff is slowly coming along. It's not, and my concern is if he isn't going to put on the size or just not be in a position where he's playing center all the time. And if he's not, I don't think that's the end of the world. I do think he's stronger as well. But if he is going to be like a wing player who initiates offense, he needs to have wing skills. And that's where the passing comes along for me. So that's like the biggest area where I really want to see him take a jump. Is it similar for you, or are there other things that you're kind of hoping to see him clean up?
Well, yeah. So by the time everyone's listening to this on, No Ceilings, NBA.com, I will have released a piece that's covering like my biggest questions for the top 30 out of the 45 that the collective released on our most recent big board. And the number one question was for Victor was, can he make others better? And I mean that in a traditional sense, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's certain players that are shooters or that are posts, like they have their own gravity, right? And because they have that gravity, it leaves other players open and available to make their own shot. I want to know how much of a playmaker Victor Wembanyama can be, because this influx of like the size to skill ratio, what we see is that these guys are more often than not kind of like a hinge offensively. They're relied upon for scoring and for setting the table for others. I mean, looking at what we're seeing now from Evan Mobley in Cleveland with Donovan Mitchell coming there, is he's kind of taken a step back a little bit offensively, but he's asked to kind of facilitate and rebound and things like that a little bit more. I think that Victor, his idealized role is going to be obviously coming in as like a scorer and a help side defender, but kind of that maturity in his game is going to be how can he look other people open, especially like as you laid out as a wing player. Obviously we touched on the strength, and I'm curious, like depending upon where he's drafted, is he going to be kind of pigeonholed to be an interior guy simply because he's tall? This is the type of stuff that we worry about in high school. Like if you play at a very small school like I did, and I was 6 foot, I had to play the 4 and the 5. But when I went to college and tried to walk onto the team, I had to try to be a 1, and there, teams aren't interested in a post playing point guard, right? So that was very short lived. But for Victor, I'm kind of worried for that same thing. Is he going to be asked to play the 5 because he's 7'4" to 7'6", depending on who's measuring him that day? I'm curious about that. And real quick, Maxwell, I want to ask you, because you put something on Twitter that really kind of sparked my interest, and I was legitimately thinking about this for a long time because I want to throw it back at you. You posed the fact that, like, is Victor Wembanyama the next player that is going to force a rule change in the NBA?
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting question. And the only one that I can think of for a player with his size to skill is like, maybe you're restricted to how long you can stand outside the 3-point line at some point. Like, are you restricted for like, you can only stand outside the 3-point line for 8 seconds before you have to at least have both feet inside the 3-point line at some point on offense,
so
something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like something along those lines. And you would have to have like a Vit cam, solely dedicated to him or something like that. But something along those lines is the only thing that I can think of in this beautiful game that we have now. Like, how can you kind of neutralize the threat that Victor Wembanyama might pose in the NBA?
Yeah. So it was at Tyler Knows Ball that originally posed the question. And the one, because he mentioned it, and then Ricky O'Donnell posted a clip of Victor like kind of getting stuck, so he just threw the ball off the backboard to himself and put it back, which is like something Marvin Bagley used to do a lot. And I think with Victor, because he's so big, it would be so much easier for him to continue to do that at the next level. So like, to me, that's one where it's like, are they going to make a rule about like, you cannot intentionally miss and get your own rebound during the course of play or something like that? Yeah. So I think that's the one we're most likely to see. Okay. Defensively, I feel like there are some things that will shake out in time, but I also think he's so productive on that end because it's hard not to be really good when you're that size. But some of the ways that like he positions his bodies while like guarding pick and rolls, he does still get a little overzealous and sells out on like closeouts, or really bites on fakes way more than he should. That kind of stuff I want to see tightened up. His screen setting can leave a lot to be desired.
Right.
And the other thing that I've had some struggle with too is that, and I feel like it's gotten better in his more recent games, was like the first game of the LNB season is the game to watch to kind of see what I'm talking about, is he can foul bait way too much. Where it's like, I'm just going to like throw up this bad shot and hope that I get a foul call. And that's just something I don't really like to see, especially for somebody who's going to be new to the league. Because like, if you are coming into the NBA, like young guys just tend to not get those calls.
Unless you're Paolo, he's been ridiculous this year.
Yeah, yeah. But Paulo's also like a freight train who loves contact.
Yes,
Right. That's the difference. It's
absolutely.
like Paulo is drawing those fouls and he's drawing them because he is like doing the thing that I had concerns about him doing, which is just getting rid of the pretty stuff and consistently attacking downhill way more often. Where with Victor, it's a lot of like, I can't really beat this guy off the dribble and I don't really want to think of anything else. So I'm just going to like bump into him and throw up a shot and hope I get
Or
a
hope he
foul.
reaches while I'm dribbling and then I can try to just
Yes.
like heave up real quick. Yeah.
So I want to see that polished up as well. Are there any other things with him that you're kind of like, because and I don't want to seem like we're being negative on Victor, but I think everyone's so excited that a lot of like interesting developmental things get overlooked in talking about him. It's all just like, oh, he's awesome, which like, yeah, he is. He's the number one player on my board. But I think at the same time, like it's fun to discuss like, hey, what are the things he can clean up and how can he be even better than he is as a guy who's scoring 25 a game in a pro league at 18, that's 7'4" with outrageous physical tools and a crazy shot making profile from three.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is like we know by default he's got to get better,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because he's gonna undergo like the best coaching that he's ever had. He's gonna have access to the best facilities and training teams and nutritionists and doctors and all of that, right? So he's gonna get better, because he's gonna get the volume whenever he gets drafted by whatever team is fortunate enough to land that pick. So he's got to get better. I'm curious about how he's schemed defensively, especially while
Okay.
he's trying to, put on that strength. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be asked, even if he profiles as a wing early on in his career, to draw the toughest assignment. I think, he's probably going to be asked to kind of help off a little bit and, play alongside another, hopefully like stronger rim to turn, at least rebounder, like someone
Mm-hmm.
who's a little bit more, girthy in the middle, like a Steven Adams type, like something along those lines would be beneficial for him to where he can just use his recovery speed and wingspan that's ridiculous and kind of be just a deterrent, like almost like a Rob Williams type role on a defensive side, something a Jaren Jackson, something
Mm-hmm.
along those lines to where he's not necessarily the anchor, but
Mm-hmm.
he's a hell of a rudder. You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, that makes it. As soon as you mentioned Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson, it just kind of like clicked for me that
Yeah.
that's really what I'd like to see. And I even think just from like a improvement standpoint, it would be really good to have him guarding on the perimeter more initially, because the one area that's sort of like a physical thing that I think he struggles with defensively is change of direction. I think that Chet was, because him and Chet are going to get compared a lot because they're
Absolutely.
the two big skinny centers that shoot threes. I always felt like Chet was a lot more fluid defensively on the perimeter when it came to just simply changing direction. Victor
Yep.
is longer, so Victor has more of a leash when it comes to that sort of thing. But that is another like just small refinement area I'd like to see is when guys are countering him, can he be a little bit more fluid through his hips? Can he regain his balance quicker and just not get shaken as often?
And not have
Um,
to rely on being like a chase down artist, like
yes, yeah,
is he going to be one of those guys that's just like more than happy to say, oh yeah, here's a lane, psych, let me try to block it from behind. You
yeah.
hope
Can he
that he
keep a
doesn't
guy in
become
front of him more often?
exactly.
So the last question I want to ask you on Victor. So you do have Scoot number one.
Yeah.
What would Victor have to do to surpass Scoot? Or what would Scoot have to do to allow Victor to pass him on your
I
board?
think I don't know if Vic can do anything else other than just like show up the next game, be 40 pounds heavier. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and again, it's really difficult for me because there's just so much unknown about Victor. And a lot of people are using that in a positive lens, right? Like unfortunately, we recently just saw that he suffered an injury in game. And a lot of people were, I think, ready to, click send whenever they found out that he was going to miss a little bit of time, but he came back in that game and kind of deterred the Boo Birds a little bit. But there's so much variance, I think, to Victor. And a lot of people are just really looking at the positive. And I wouldn't even know who to blame if the whole Victor thing wouldn't work out because there's no blueprint for it. Like there's no
Yeah.
person that could be like, oh, I know exactly how to work this guy to his fullest potential because we haven't seen anything like him. So um, ultimately, I think if everything continues the way it's going now, he's going to jump Scoot. He's answered a lot of questions very recently in the game film. And if he comes out and shows that he's capable of improving as a playmaker, then it's just a matter of maybe my next big board where I have it switched.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So we're going to keep it moving. It's sort of an interesting international class this year. There are two other guys that I currently have in the first round. You've got one of these guys also in the first round. So we're going to start with him first. And unfortunately, he just suffered an injury. That is Rayan Rupert, a French product who's playing for the New Zealand Breakers. Like we said, unfortunately, a broken wrist is going to have him on the sideline for a little bit. Big, long wing. He's 6'7". He measured in with a 7'3" wingspan.
Stupid.
He is very, very long. Through the early start of NBL play, including preseason games, he was averaging 8.1 points, 2.9 rebounds, just about an assist and a steal, 0.2 blocks. Was shooting 37.5% from the field, 36.8% from three, and 79.2% from the free throw line. With Rupert, I think it is always important to mention that in the NBL historically, none of the next stars that have come over have been efficient in NBL play. So you might see those field goal splits and say, oh, under 40% from the field. Oh, well, that's not very good. And you're right. But at the same time, LaMelo, Giddey, like all those guys were under.
Ousmane Dieng last year.
Yeah, exactly. So I was really surprised when I did the Ousmane Dieng piece last year, just how bad efficiency wise everyone's been over there. Cause it's a real physical league and it's an older league. Like all the Americans that are over there are guys where it's like, oh yeah, I remember like playing with that guy in like 2K15. And like now he's just like 28 and grizzled and awesome, but he plays in the Australian league. So it's a really tough league to score in. With Rupert, obviously like the size, the defense, that's a big part of the appeal. It goes beyond that though. He does do a phenomenal job of keeping players in front of him. Just like we talked about Victor, he has good feet, he has active hands, and he really walls off drives. He also moves backwards really well while maintaining his footwork. So even if guys get downhill, you're still never really getting past him. He has a really great ability to get his bounce back after he's been shaken. And off the ball, he has smart rotational instincts. He knows when to stunt on a closeout and when to close out hard. Beyond that, though, offensively, it's a game that's coming together. He has a really good handle. He has a really good view of the floor, keeps his dribble really low for a player his size and gets low to the ground when he attacks the basket. His shot looks clean and normal off the catch, and he's a good free throw shooter. There can be some disconnect on his jump shot when he's shooting it off the dribble. And it felt like I watched a lot of his early NBL games just because there was no other basketball going on. Yeah. And it felt like he never hit a tough shot in the mid range. But his vision is really good. He's really able to get out of tough spots with the ball. So what's your assessment of Rupert at this stage? And obviously we might not see him for a while, but what did you make of what we've seen so far?
Yeah, the injury sucks, but I was kind of sharing this with the No Ceilings crew is that I don't know if it's necessarily going to hurt his draft stock that much because there's the whole mystique about him being an international guy. He's already got some games under his belt for this season. He's already shown a lot of improvement from last year to this year too, especially on the offensive end where that jump shot is coming along really nicely. I had more questions about the handle, so listening to you break it down was like a little bit off from my notes, but my notes were from earlier in the off season. And so what we're seeing from this year, going back and actually looking at it, I kind of have that underline as like, was I just seeing things or is it like him actually improving over the summer, which, is more than likely to happen from what we've seen from the jump shot last year to this year. But the defense is where it starts for me, Maxwell. I have in my notes that he's a hound defensively, like point of attack guy, very switchable. He puts on some strength a little bit more. You're talking about a guy who could comfortably guard most 1-4s in the NBA. He's that type of an athlete too, where he's not like super powerful with his athleticism, but it's very functional. Like he can stay in front of guys, flip his hips really well. Recovery speed is there. Attacking closeouts is there. Reminds me a lot of like Mikal Bridges on that end of the ball, where it's just like defensively, I think there's a lot of similarities. And what we're seeing from the 3-point shot this year, I think that parlays nicely. But I also, when I did my player comp for him, I'll put in a little bit of RJ Barrett because he does have some handling. He does have a little bit of creation ability. So again, prospect chemistry for no ceilings is not saying like this is a carbon copy of this guy, but they're like shades of a little bit of these guys. We put them in their own beakers and then shake it up and see what comes out. That's kind of what Rayan Rupert looks like for me is RJ Barrett, Mikal Bridges, kind of handily enough to where if he's like your third or fourth option, you trust him when someone's trying to like sell on his jump shot that he can create a little bit for himself. And Maxwell, what we see from like really efficient role players in the NBA is that they were trusted with larger roles prior to coming over to the league. So him getting that experience in the NBL, I think is huge for his development. I wouldn't even necessarily worry about the efficiency numbers anywhere else but the 3-point shot, and looking to see the types of reads that he's capable of making with a live dribble as well.
Yeah. So I think I'm a little leery with the 3 still because he hit it really well in like their preseason games and then like the early games. And then it sort of fell off. So he had an 0 for 1 and then a 1 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 3, 0 for 2.
Yeah.
And then he made like 3 out of 8 in the last 4 games. So I think while like the 37% sounds really good, I'm not totally sold on that being a weapon. And that's like the one area where I can see things getting murky for him. Is obviously he's a guy I trust off the dribble. I trust as a passer and a decision maker. And I think the idealized role is like he can hit a 3 if he's open or a corner 3 and keep the defense honest. And then function is like a second side playmaker as a result. Somebody else creates an advantage, gets the defense moving. You kick it to Rupert. Rupert is attacking a defense. It's already a little off base. So maybe if he's open, he knocks it down. If not, he can drive and create something else. I think if he's not in a position to keep the defense honest, though, it gets way harder just because even with his size and length, it's going to be harder to get that, downhill momentum going when a defender does not need to fly toward you. So that's my concern. Do you sort of see a similar offensive role for him ideally though, as being like that second side guy?
Yeah, and going back to the 3-point shot, not necessarily being there, that was also why I have Matisse Thybulle as one of the guys in that comparison as well, where you have the defenses there. And we always like to say, if this player adds a jump shot, they're going to be nasty. And it's not always as easy as just adding a jump shot. Look at, what Isaac Okoro is going through right now in Cleveland too, right? So I do like that assessment though, as a second side creator, because again, that's that RJ Barrett piece where you don't want him to be your primary guy. Like RJ Barrett is like your primary play initiator, probably not a good look. But if it is your second, or even on like a really good team, like a third or a fourth, then you're cooking with gasoline, right? So I think I love your assessment of him because he can get a little highish on his dribbles from what I saw, and he can be erratic on those drives too. Like his processing, like when the defense is kind of collapsing onto him, is not necessarily the best, but if the defense is kind of shifted and leaving him an opening, I trust that more with like slashing, cutting, and short roll stuff.
Yeah. So I think I'm definitely higher on that side of it as far as like his decision making and his dribbling. Where I do get concerned though is just like when it's not there. Like when he gets stuck, if he passes out of it, it's fine, but like he does not have the ability to like hit those mid-range shots off the dribble right now. Like when it's clogged, I just don't think he's a capable scorer yet. To your point, though, like you mentioned the Thybulle comp, and in some ways that gives me a little bit more optimism, just because like I don't like Matisse Thybulle to dribble the basketball. You know what I mean?
No.
Where with Repair, like at least it feels like the ball skills are a lot further along, and it's 6'7" and having that 7'3" wingspan. And just what we've seen out of, again, like I mentioned these guys all the time, like these Trent Watford, like just these big, smart players, like they find a way. Yeah. Like those types of guys can cut and create their own openings. So I'm hoping that is something that can give him a little bit of leash, just having that size and a bit of ball skills if the shot isn't there on day one. Any final thoughts on Rupert?
No, I think that we nailed it. I just think that, again, with all the injuries that we're seeing with a lot of these young prospects before college basketball has even started. It's been a real big bummer, man. And, on top of that, we're dealing with some ridiculous suspension stuff for some of these players as well. So missing out on some of these top prospects so early in the season sucks. But again, it's never ideal for an injury, but I'm glad it's for a player like him. I'm glad it's not like a lower body injury as opposed to like a wrist. But again, that might complicate the jump shot, but we'll see. But
last thing we need.
Yeah, that's the last thing we need with a guy like Rupert. But I'm excited for him, man. I love him, even though I got him 27th on my board. I have high hopes for him.
Yeah. So with this next one, I'm gonna kind of throw it to you for the player breakdown because you're higher on him than I am. So I just kind of, and I haven't seen a ton of him, so I want to see kind of what I'm missing and what you're seeing in him. So this next player is James Nagy, currently playing for Barcelona in the ACB, the Spanish league, one of the best domestic leagues in the world. Barcelona also a team that plays in the Euro League. So this is a high caliber team in a very good league that is also playing in the Euro League because they are so good in the great league that they play in their country. So because of that, his role is not super large at the moment. Across all the Barcelona games he's played this season, he's averaging 10 minutes per game, 3.1 points per game, 2.4 rebounds, and almost an entire block per game, despite only playing 10 minutes per game, and very efficient as a finisher, 61.9% from the field. The free throw shooting has left a lot to be desired, though. 33.3% on his free throws the year before this, 30.8%, and the year before that, 30.9%. So definitely some big issues at the free throw line for James Nagy. But he's a guy you've got a second round grade on. Just kind of take us through what you like about Nagy.
Well, yeah, and so like me being higher on him, I have, he's 37th on my board.
Yeah,
and so
you're not dying on the hill or anything.
Yeah, when you're assessing a guy like him, and it's fun, like not funny, but if you want to kind of expound upon this, you probably can a little bit better. But a mutual friend of ours on Draft Twitter, Nathaniel Miller, was talking about like once you get like past a certain amount of like really high end domestic products, that it really kind of falls off in terms of talent level. So really, you should start evaluating like these top 15 international prospects and just start like taking them in the second round. And that wasn't like my motive on putting Nagy here. It was based on the film that I saw, but that logic kind of struck me in a way that's like, maybe I really need to at least reconsider how I'm calibrating where I'm putting guys based on, how many collegiate guys and international prospects. But I like Nagy a lot, man. The defensive versatility, I think, is like where it starts with him. He's a very fluid mover. I trust him in the NBA switching onto wings and even some guards too. Star players are going to give everybody problems, right?
Yeah.
But if you're talking about like your secondary, tertiary options on most NBA offenses, I really trust him on the switching. He's very well coordinated. Ball tracking ability, I think, is pretty high up there relative to where I'm slating him on my board, right? Like I don't think he's a generational guy. Even though this is a generational draft class. I do like his switchability prospects. Obviously, his athleticism will lead him to be a pretty good lob threat. And the shot blocking. I mean, if you look at the per 36, I mean, he's close to 4 blocks a game if you're going to be projecting him out in a bigger role. But at 37, if you're looking at, a backup center, if you're a really good team, maybe even a third option, and you're looking to solidify a championship rotation with a high second round pick, James Nagy is that guy, man, because the rebounding is there. Some concerns that I have is the decision making for kickouts, like when the defense kind of swarms him a little bit whenever he's on the interior. His intermediate ball movement, talking about can he power dribble and like conduct a post move successfully. And he needs to get a little bit stronger. But again, we always follow that up with, we know that these guys are at some point going to, eventually get a little bit stronger. And I think that'll help him on the glass. And that if post play against some of the stronger, like Joel Embiid's, Nikola Jokic's, Ayton's, what have you. But ultimately, I just think that he epitomizes what the NBA is looking for in a lot of bigs now is, these lob threats, rim rolling guys, shot blocking and rebounding. And he's very athletic and switchable. So I think that at 37 is a pretty good player that you could pick up at that point in the draft.
Yeah. So I'm I'm a little lower. Like I've got him 57. So I technically also have a draftable grade on him, but I'm not just super enthused. Like I think,
Yeah. What's your hesitations with him?
yeah. So I'm gonna let's get the good stuff out of the way first, so that I'm not just dumping on him. So he's 6'10". I think he's obviously big, but I think he's pretty strong for like his age.
Yeah,
Like you mentioned the size, like he needs to get stronger, but I think he's at like a really good starting point for a young big.
absolutely.
With that, he screens really well, which is something that I love. Like it is so overlooked so much of the time, but you need to be able to meaningfully create space for your guards. And if you're just ghosting everything and whatever, not only does it become predictable, but it becomes less efficient for your ball handlers, especially when you are a guy who like he's just going to screen and dive to the basket. Like the defense knows James Najee is not popping off the screen. They know he's not going to ghost it and spot up on the perimeter. Like he's going to have to roll the basket. So setting that good screen is important. Yeah, I think I'm a little lower on his switchability than you are, but I do think his feet are really good defensively when he has to guard on the perimeter for a player his age. I think that with him, it's just going to be a matter of experience and refinement. I don't think it's a question of does he have the physical tools to be able to do it. I think those are there. I think it's just a matter of kind of cleaning up a few things defensively, especially his balance. I think that there are times where he just isn't fully on balance and gets a little antsy with how he uses his feet, and that can allow guys who are more crafty with the ball or will throw in more counter moves to get by him. But I do think he's really good off the floor, and I think that's the key to his finishing, his rebounding, and his shot blocking. It's like for a guy his size, he gets up real easy. So he's just got that quick pogo stick, like whoop, he's off the ground and he's met you at the rim. My other concerns are sort of just like role and translation. Like he's not going to do anything other than finish, which is okay, I guess. Like there are guys that do that in the NBA. But if a guy is just going to be sort of like a blocks and dunks big man, I also like to see something else. It's not a total necessity, like you said. If you're projecting him to be a backup or a third option, right?
Yeah.
But I think I just wish there was like some other thing, whether it be like short roll passing or like the ability to just like put it on the floor a little bit, make a shot at the elbow. If there's something else to his game, it would be a lot easier for me to be excited about him. But otherwise right now he's a guy, it's like you can draft him or you cannot. Like I don't know. Like to me, part of it is there are always going to be athletic players that can protect the rim and finish. Like there's those guys every single year, and that doesn't mean they're not valuable. But I do think it's a philosophical question worth asking, to be like, well, would I rather swing the fences on something else? Even if the probability of me hitting on that player is lower, would it make more sense for me to just try and get somebody who's maybe like a big wing that really defends really well, but they don't have a shot all the way there yet? Like I'd rather kind of bet on that sort of a player at the back of a draft than James Najee.
And I think that's fair, but going back to something that you mentioned earlier is like the limited playing time. It's really hard to establish himself within the flow of an offense to be able to really do much else of anything within a 10-minute time frame. And then you really have to look at like style of play in EuroLeague as opposed to the NBA. It's, you know, a lot of dribble, pass, shoot for wings, and it's very physical league, right? Like it's not just a bunch of, you know, flopping over there or anything like that, but the penetration, the driving, the pure speed of the NBA from other areas of the court, I think really kind of helps the offense. I don't know if it helps it, but it's a lot different, right? So if you're taking like the best parts of, you know, Najee's game and incorporating that in an NBA style offense and coupled with that athleticism, I think that the role looks a little bit different. And I think that the lanes are a little bit wider. The opportunities for, you know, pick and roll, rim running is a little bit more frequent in the NBA as opposed to that EuroLeague style of play. So, I mean, you look at a guy like Nick Claxton. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the best screen setter, but has a really prominent role on an NBA team, largely due to depth. But if you take him off that team and put him on other teams, he's a good player.
He's going to play,
and he's largely going to probably be a backup at a lot of other places. But that style of play still translates to the NBA. And again, the best coaching that he's probably going to get And it might actually, American style of play would help him to show other areas of his game, as opposed to, if you do anything else other than what I tell you to, and you jeopardize our ability of still being able to play in this league or being demoted, like then you're gone, guy. So it's a little bit more freedom in that aspect too.
For sure. I think that's well worth considering, and something that I've talked to a lot of people about, because I think it's such an interesting thing. It's like, I mentioned the type of player I would kind of rather gamble on.
Sure.
But at a certain point, like, it is your job as a general manager and evaluator to decide, like, am I going to be picking somebody who's just not an NBA player? Because if they're not, and James Najee is, then like the more valuable thing is the guy that actually plays in the NBA. And he is very good at a few things already. So somebody that we're going to move to next is the type of player that I would much rather bet on than James Najee. And is somebody that you were much lower on than I am.
Yeah, really weird that I liked this player, but then when I talked with you guys, that I was like, whoa, it looks like I hate this guy. Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. So it is Nikola Jurisic, who is currently playing for Mega. I believe they're are they Mega Mozart? Right now?
Yeah.
Okay, right now they're Mega Mozart. By the time this comes out tomorrow morning, they might be something different.
Mega Death.
They could be, yeah. Yeah, they could, Mega Leaks, Mega KK Soccer Bet. They've been so many different megas. But Jurisic is 6'8", sort of the crafty decision-making 6'8" forward type that we've seen a lot more of recently. So I really like Jurisic. He's a top 20 player for me on the board that I submitted. For the consensus big board, I had him 17th. Really knows how to get downhill. He is a crafty attacker. His handle is creative, but can often get high.
Yeah.
He's a clever passer. He uses interesting deliveries that are hard for defenders to telegraph. Very aggressive charging the rim. He has a nice mid-range jump shot that does not always fall at the highest clip. He can shoot off the dribble. He really fights inside when he gets to the basket. Really good entry passes from the outside as well. He's got a good spin move that helps him cover ground, and he's able to see over defenders with his size. Defensively, his stance looks pretty good. He's doing a decent job of staying balanced on that end. But it's also the area where I definitely have the most concerns about him. A lot of times he'll tell on himself with his feet and really sag off players on the perimeter. And he has a very hard time against counters. Is something I wrote about in my quick hits when I covered him the other day. The other issue with him is the outside shot has not been consistent yet. So far through the 3 games that he's played with Mega this season, I believe he's out with an injury currently. 11.3 points per game, 1.3 rebounds per game. Again, kind of low for a player his size. 3.7 assists per game, but 44% from the field, 66.7 from the free throw line, and only 16.7% from 3. So again, very small sample, but the outside shot is something that in all of his plays so far has never really been all the way there. So where are you at with Jurisic? What are your concerns? Why are you lower at the moment? And what do you like? Because you said you liked him as well. So
I have him 39th on my board, so only 2 spots behind Najee. And I even when I messaged you kind of behind the scenes, I have a little asterisk next to him. It's like I feel like I want to move him up. But I kind of want to wait until at least have like a month of evaluating college ball and everything kind of all together before I even tinker with my board. Part of his appeal to me was just like the size and playmaking that you see with him. And I think the defense is going to be kind of undersold, but I like his ability to kind of shoot passing lanes. Still very young. He's got the physical tools that I think that once he like kind of starts rounding up into form and starts getting used to the style of play, that defense is going to elevate. And I think it's really going to be a big part of his appeal. He's a very good transition threat. I like his ability to fill lanes pretty easily. He's very instinctual on that. And then again, the big thing about this guy is going to be how efficient of a 3-point shooter he is. And I don't know if a lot of that is going to be kind of himself creating his own 3-point shot or just playing off of somebody else. Because if you're going to profile this guy as like a big playmaking wing, some of those 3-point opportunities are going to be self-generated. And right now he just doesn't have the efficiency Even the shooting consistency can be a little bit off, especially in the upper part of his mechanics. But again, I think that that's going to be cleaned up. He's, again, very young. He feels like he's been a name that's been associated with foreign basketball for a little bit now, surprisingly relative to his age. But I'm worried about the 3-point shot, Maxwell. Like, that's going to be the big thing. If he's going to be a wing NBA player at his size, the efficiency and the consistency has to be there. And that's kind of where I have him in like a wait and see range, to where I have no problem with an early second round grade on him right now. But if I'm going to look at him as a potential top 20 guy, even sneaking up into the lottery level, he's got to, like, no kidding, be an offensive threat, because that playmaking is only going to get him so far in the NBA if he is not a reliable three-point shooter.
Yeah. It's definitely something that's got to come around, because as it stands now, I think it would be different if the defensive concerns didn't exist, right? Like, if you felt like, okay, well, this guy can defend and he's really crafty and he can get inside, and like there's a chance he might shoot, you'd feel way better about it.
Which the defense could still, like I said, it could get there.
Yeah. I think my concern too is I just look back over his track record. I was doing this the other day, and his 3-point shooting is just really up and down everywhere. Like, and he played in a lot of like youth leagues and youth events. And like in 2020, he made 36% of his threes. And then the next year it was 22.9, and then it was 32%. So we still don't really know what he is as an outside shooter, but over the past couple of seasons, he's been a really good free throw shooter. And I think his touch is good. And there's nothing that screams out to me as far as being wrong mechanically. But again, like, I've been told I have a pretty jump shot. I can't make it for me to save my life. I play the Ben Simmons game when I'm playing pickup ball these days. So I can't tell you for sure that it's going to come, right? Because there are tons of guys that can make mid-range shots and have a good looking shot, and the three just never comes. But given his age, the league that he's playing in, I feel pretty optimistic. And I think it's one of those things where if it does get there, it's really just going to even further open up everything else he's able to do on the offensive end. But again, if we're sitting here at the end of the season and he's still shooting like these percentages, I don't know. I have a really hard time putting a first round grade on a guy like that. And Nikola Jovic finished around a similar percentage, but he had a really quick trigger. He had a really high release. I just think on an eye test level alone and a confidence level with how often he took threes, I felt way better about his shot this time last year than I do about Duricic, even though I feel better about Duricic's defense.
When you also, those couple inches too, like, makes it a little bit more intriguing, where he's looking at like 6'10", 6'11", and you're 6'7", 6'8", that height of eye isn't as prominent, right? But the 3-point shot is really where I'm at. Like, I loved his everything else. And looking at his jump shot, like you said, it doesn't look bad. It's just like, why is it not going in? And again, some of that might be self-generated. Standing still might be his friend, and you kind of use that ancillary playmaking skills, on the weak side, things like that. But I don't know, if he's profiling as a playmaking wing, he's got to be a threat, because defenses are just going to drop, and he's also not like, I don't even know if he's sneaky athletic. Like, he's okay. He's not like a negative on the, he's a fine athlete, but he's not going to like take anybody off the bounce, I don't feel like, either. So, and that's also kind of playing into the evaluation a little bit.
I do really trust his craft though. Like, I feel like the fact that like he's a guy who is a 6'8" wing, is already rejecting screens and already using like fake passes to open things up for himself, and just using different types of misdirection and creativity. It gives me optimism that the rest of that will kind of come around. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how effective that is, if given that he's just a decent athlete, if the threat of an outside shot isn't there. Because if you look at like the Bogdanoviches, for example, like Bogdan does not, like, he's such a good shooter that he can open up a lot for himself. With Bojan, it's kind of the same. Like, he's just a really legitimate threat from the outside. So he can get to this kind of like funky, crafty playmaking stuff because he's going to draw you out of the paint. Where with Duricic, if that isn't there, I really don't know what that could look like.
But again, like you said, the shot's there. You're talking about a completely different player, highly
Exactly.
valuable.
And then
Yeah.
you feel bad for passing on him if he shoots it. So the next guy on our list here is a player that we're both really interested in.
Yeah.
We've got him in the same range, sort of a man of mystery type, I would say, just because I feel like everything about him has been just really kind of quiet and not
Yep.
super discussed. He is signed to Baskonia, another Spanish league team. He currently plays for their third division team most often.
Kind of
So it's going to
worrisome.
be
Yeah.
one of those just real tricky evaluations as far as like level of competition and things like that. It is Usman Ndiaye. He is 6'11", really fluid and agile. In the games against competition that he plays, he can get separation off the bounce. He's an active mover offensively, pretty disciplined. Has a floater, shot looks good. He's confident in it. He can get downhill, and he's good tracking the ball. So just a very intriguing player with really great size. How do you feel about Ndiaye? And then how do you just feel about evaluating a player like this when they're playing in a league that, with like Najee, like we talked about earlier, he's playing in a league where it's so between both the main Spanish league and the Euro League, like the level of competition is so high that it can be tough to know what to make of such a young player. Whereas Ndiaye, it's sort of the exact opposite. He's playing, in a weaker league. So how do you evaluate a player like that? And what do you see out of Ndiaye so far?
Well, like the simple answer is so did Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's like the best player in the NBA. So Ndiaye is probably going to be on that same trajectory here.
Yep.
Yeah, right. It's just going to be one of the best ever. Yeah, absolutely. Why is this even a question? It is really tricky though. To answer your question seriously, Maxwell, because you want to see him when he is the big fish in the little pond. That you want him to play like the big fish in the little pond, and whenever he is given opportunities against higher levels of competition at his age, you want to see him at least demonstrate flashes that kind of makes you being curious about him a little bit more rational and understandable, right? I love his shooting potential. I mean, at his, you laid it out beautifully, Maxwell, because everything around him is just so quiet, and I feel like everybody is waiting to see something positive before they come out and say, I had him at such and such spots on my big board, right? Because he profiles as the exact type of player that everyone is looking for in the NBA, right? Like these big, like shooting, ball handling, wing / forward guys, because like you said, he's what, 6'10", 6'11", if not bigger now. Has some handle, help defense, looks really good in the film that I saw. Has raw instincts on that end to where if he starts getting some fundamentals down, like he could be a real menace on that side. Some finishing ability, but like most young players at his size with his skill, he can settle for his jump shot a little too much. You worry about what his interior game is going to look like. And he's had some bad misses in some of the games that I watched where it's just like, oh, buddy, what are you doing? But I don't know enough about him to say this definitively, but I'm curious as to how late to the game of basketball that he came to and how much of a growth spurt, how quickly he underwent, because it just looks like there's so many raw tools there. And he may not even be a this year guy, but I have him at 45 because I'm like, if it clicks in a hurry, like he can just skyrocket. Like all it takes is for someone to go scout him internationally and be like, oh my goodness, like no one's talking about this guy. Why not? So I kind of feel like I have him in a cop out range where I have him at 45 to where I can be like, I had him monitored, right? But I was a little hesitant if he takes off, but I don't know, just a lot of intriguing tools there, but it is all very raw, but those tools are very enticing.
Yeah. So that's like the big concern with him. So like, if you're listening to this and you've not dug into the film and you're like, whoa, this guy's like 6'11" and there's like shooting potential there, why is he so low on your board? He just has not been very efficient. So he played in the German B League last year, and he wasn't necessarily efficient there. 41.4% from the field, 29.8% from three, 52.6% from the free throw line. This year, the free throw shooting is better.
Yeah.
But he's only making 25% of his threes and he's 35.2% from the field. So he's playing in this third league in Spain and like he's just not efficient, but he's averaging like 7 rebounds per game. He's averaging over a block a game, basically playing as a wing. There's just a lot that's got to click because, and he has time is the important thing to keep in mind with him. He's not going to be forced to enter the draft until 2026. So if he doesn't play well this year, like that's fine. I have no problem seeing where he's at next year. The concern is just like, yeah, if this stuff doesn't get better, he very quickly becomes we have Baba Miller at home. and that's not great. Like you don't want a guy who like is really raw and we're just not really seeing any of it. So
or we'll sign John Butler out of free agency or whatever. We'll convert his 2-way contract or something.
For sure. Because the thing is, though, he's taking 5 threes a game. It's 6'11", and like the defensive flashes are really interesting. So I don't want to write him off. Like, I don't feel comfortable like totally selling on him when I think the percentages are going to come around. So that's sort of where I'm at. Do you have anything else you want to throw out there on him?
I'll just say real quick for the level of competition also comes, and no disrespect to third league, coaches. They're probably, they are better basketball minds than I am, but I will say, relative to the other players that he is going to be compared with and competing against, like the level of coaching there's a substantial difference. Right. So I'm curious to see like if he stays international. I know that the Overtime Elite, they love international prospects. Like, since he has 4 years before he has to declare, we might see him try his hand in the Overtime Elite. They have no shortage of international players, or even something like the G League Ignite, where we might see him against with a higher level of coaching, something along those lines to kind of help hone that raw potential that he possesses.
Yeah, I would love to see that. The next guy we're going to get to is a really interesting player, a guy I think that we both kind of had eyes on last year, entered the draft initially and then withdrew early. He is currently playing for Ratio Farm in Germany. He is the last emperor, Fedor Zugic. That one's for the MMA fans out there. Zugic, an outstanding movement shooter. It's 6'6". Across his leagues currently this season is hitting 35% of his threes, but boy, oh boy, when he gets hot, does he pour it on in a hurry. Currently scoring around 8 points per game. The rest of his game, I think, can leave a little bit to be desired. I do feel like he's doing a much better job now of leveraging his gravity as a 3-point shooter and getting downhill and then finding guys when the help comes. I think he's jumping better, which sounds silly, but like the plays where he gets up around the basket or at least a rebound, it does feel like he's getting up higher than he did last season. But ultimately just a lethal shooter with a quick trigger and no shortage of confidence. He's had some really impressive outings for this season. A couple games with like 17 points, 18 points. How do you feel about Zugic? And do you think this could be the year for him? He's still only 19, or do you still think he's a couple years away?
I felt better about him, I think, coming into last year than I do about coming into this year, largely because I believe that this class, nothing to take away from the last class. I was a big fan of the last, but I feel like this year might be legitimately one of the best draft classes in NBA history. So he fell down the ranks a little bit. And before I throw out the number, Maxwell, you know how it is when you got to make a big board and you get to a certain range where you can talk him up, 15 spots or down 15 spots from where I'm about to say. And I would sleep well at night. Like, okay, like I'm not going to fight you. It's just like preferences, right? I have him at 90. And again, that sounds like it's like very low, but that's still in a range to where I feel like he could like sneak up and be a draftable prospect. And largely because with the shooting potential, looking at him shooting this year, it looks a lot better in terms of efficiency. Prior seasons, it was really kind of spotty, similar to what we were talking about with Nikola Jurisic. And really that's his swing skill. Like he might be the best shooter in this draft class. At least the form looks that way. Like it's very pretty and he can get nuclear really quick. Competes on the glass. He uses his size to his benefit on that end as well. And he at least tries defensively. I do like that he's an effort guy on that side. A lot of things to clean up. And he's not one of those just like stand still, I'm going to pass the ball and sit here guy. Like that European style of play teaches you that you're constantly on a string with everybody else. You got to relocate. But then we get to the shot consistency. Sometimes the shot selection leaves a
Yeah,
lot to be desired.
I thought the
Uh,
same.
his rotations on the defensive end are highly questionable. And when he does put the ball on the ground and look to make reads, they can be very crazy and wild sometimes. I think that he thinks that he might be Taron Armstrong out there
Yep.
sometimes. But overall, shooting's always going to give you a fighting chance
Mm-hmm.
in the NBA, and it's a great starting point, but it really comes down to what else can you do, because shooting is still a very important part of the game, but now you have to be able to do more than that. Like long gone are the days of you being Jason Capono and like holding down
Yeah.
an NBA roster spot now. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see what else he can do this year, but I believe that he's going to get better, and it looks like he already has.
Yeah, I agree with you too in a lot of those assessments. I thought we said about the passing was really spot on. One of my notes is a bit overambitious in general, and then parentheses
Yes.
passing, comma shot selection, which were like the two things that you mentioned specifically. And yeah, the defense is rough. Like the rotation, I think he's balanced and like he's engaged, but he really dies on screens for one.
Yes.
Like if he is guarding on the ball and somebody sets a screen, like he's dead.
Yeah.
He is so choppy with his strides. When
Yep.
he's in a situation where like he's got to move and rotate and make decisions off the ball, like he will take 8 steps to like get where he needs to go. It's a big problem. And it really prevents him from covering ground. And I feel like just as a whole, but especially on defense, he plays smaller than he is. Like he's listed at 6'6", and I'm constantly like, we're going to talk about some other guys later that are listed at 6'6", and I'm like, is he really
Yeah,
6'6"?
he
Because
might be 6'4", 6'5". Yeah.
yeah, like there are times where he just does not feel that size. We're gonna kind of keep it moving through some of these other guys. The next one is a guy that I'm like, yeah, I think we're both just kind of like, we don't really want to have this conversation right now.
Yeah.
It's Roko Perkachin, Perkison. It's Perkison, right?
I've heard
I used to
both.
say Perkachin. I think the commentators say
I think it's
Perkison.
Perkison. Yeah. It's
So
like almost medicinal.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah. So he played with Sabona in the Adriatic League last year. Now he's playing in the Spanish league for Girona, which is one of the best teams in that league, and or a team in a really good league rather. And it has not gone very well. He is, and this is a guy too that like in 2020 there was a lot of buzz like he could
Yep.
come out and he could be like not just a first round pick but maybe a lottery guy. He's 6'9", really good decision maker, plays really hard on defense, creates a lot of chaos. Like there was a lot of hope and expectation for him. And this season so far, he's averaging 2.2 points, 2.7 rebounds, 0.3 assists, 0.3 steals, 34.8% from the field, 0% from three, 44%.
I was gonna say I
line.
don't believe he's hit any of his threes at any point so far this year, which is a
No.
big bummer.
Yeah, because that was always the thing, was like he was always sort of like an if he shoots it guy. And then you look at the percentages and be like, oh man, like he's actually hitting like an okay percentage this year. And then you would watch the games and it's like, oh, nobody's even covering him. Like these are all just wide open. And last year across his leagues, he ended up at 28.6. So the year in 2021, when people thought he might come out, he hit 35% of his threes. And it was like, okay, he just needs to take that next step forward, take more of them. And last year it regressed to 28.6. This year he's not hit a three. Do you think there's a way for him to like get his groove back? Like, do you think if he does finish the year strong, would you feel comfortable like taking him, or would you be like, I need to see like a full year of it, given the kind of steps back that we've seen? Like if he has a strong last 10, 15 games to a season, is that enough for him to come out? Or do you think we need like just more time in general with him?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
He has over the past couple draft classes just steadily gone down. You know, as much as I
Yeah.
said that you can talk people up and down my board once you get to this range, I have him at 107. And in my notes that I sent you, I was like, I already want to move him down when I'm like looking at other people that I have behind him.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with, you know, it's kind of like rollover minutes. You know, it's like rollover credit from like prior draft classes where you're like, if he hits, if he hits, if he hits. Even his most idealized role, like I don't know where I would ever look at him and Jaime Jaquez like side by side and be like, yeah, I'm going to take Rocco precaution when I could get Jaime Jaquez. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
Like, I think at his best, you would want him to do kind of similar things to what Jaime does, because like
Mhm.
his chief skill that I appreciate is his size and toughness and tenacity. And you have to have so much else to your game in order for that to be meaningful, right? Like his cutting instincts are there. He has some driving to his game, but if you're going to be that size, you're not a center. You're not even a small ball center. So you're looking at kind of like a 3-4. If you don't provide any shooting promise at all or playmaking promise at all, then you lose a lot of your luster really quickly. And I think that he's shooting himself down my board like as we speak. And that sucks, man, because when we criticize, and I say we, not us in particular, but like a collective we, sometimes we criticize players for betting on themselves and going into a draft. And sometimes we like praise guys for coming back a year and like trying to hone their craft and be better. But like, what would Rocco's life look like if he just decided to go pro and be a second round pick, you know, a couple of
Yeah.
draft classes ago? And, you know, does he improve? Does he get better? Like, is it a confidence thing just on the team that he's playing? I have
Mhm.
no idea, man. But it's crazy to think that this is where my evaluation is with a guy like Rocco now.
It's like a guy that bumps me out, and I hope that he turns it around and has a big year. Um, Sort of on the opposite side of the spectrum, a name that I've seen pop up more and more recently is Juan Nunez Garcia, a
Yeah.
teammate of Fedor Sugic for he is very fun. He is a clever ball handler. He is a tricky pick and roll operator, really knows how to navigate screens with the ball in his hands. Footwork is the name of the game for him offensively, as far as how he sets up his own offense and freezes defenses. Can read the pick and roll very well, make cross corner kicks. He's got a nice little floater game to him, budding shooter. Uh, Defensively, again, there's some issues, but he's 6'3", so he's got solid
Yeah.
size for a guard. Strides can be an issue. Does bite off more than he can chew at times. He's a passer and can force quite a bit. The other thing I noted with him is it feels like for somebody with good footwork to set up their own shots on his drive, there's almost never any pace. Like, he's going to pull up if there's hesitation, because if he drives, he just charges the basket at full
Yeah.
speed. So a younger guy, plenty of room to grow. But what are your thoughts on Juan Nunez Garcia at this stage?
I like him a lot. He was a guy that I was even eyeing last year. I had him as a
Mhm.
potential top 100 prospect last year. This year, I have him all the way down at 116. But again, you know, talk me up, talk me down. I'm fine. But right now, my evaluation is like he could be like a Raul Neto type player. I think coming into the league, reliable secondary, tertiary playmaker, guy you can trust that could come in. Make good passing reads. He plays passing lanes well on the defensive side of the ball. That's really about the only role that I trust him in on that side. Like you,
Yeah.
you gotta really have your front court on lock if you're gonna have him as like your point guard. His off ball movement I think is really well. I think that there are some secondary some bench lineups where you can even maybe run him as a 2, just from the spot up capability that he's looking to have. In the handle, ambidexterity, I think that he finishes well with either hand. Has good body control, but like you mentioned on the drives, the change of pace, it seems like he tries to be more shifty with his shoulders than with his hips or anything like that, and
Mhm.
it seems more herky jerky than it does. More herky jerky, less wiggle. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then like the shot sample might be an indictment because the percentages look promising, but he doesn't necessarily shoot like a lot
Mhm.
as a guard. And I don't trust him like once he feels contact either. So I think
Yeah,
that's really going to kind of limit him. But you said that he's 6'3". I think he plays like he's 6 foot even,
he
maybe.
does.
You know, he
Yeah.
plays very small, low to the ground. Um, but I think that he's promising. He's still so young. I kind of want to see him again for another year before I'm ready to vault him up. But he seems like a very steady, safe point guard. You know what I mean? Like that you can put him in and you know that he's not going to make mistakes, but he's also really not going to necessarily give you an edge offensively either. He's just going to kind of keep the thing going.
For sure. And yeah, the Neto comp, I think for that reason alone is a pretty interesting one. We're going to run through kind of some of these other guys just real quick.
Sure.
A player that you listed on here, Ariel Hakporti, a guy who was in the mix last year, unfortunately going to miss this season with an injury. Is he a player that you feel you need to see more of? Like if he put his name in this year, are you just kind of gun shy on him with the fact that he's coming off of injury, or would you be willing to kind of jump the gun on him?
It's not necessarily injury. It's what I think his offensive role is because he's got good interior touch. He just kind of feels like a time capsule player where he's just like, you trust him as like an interior scorer, kind of like Jahlil Okafor in that way, but it's the verticality I think he lacks, especially on the second hop. He's more of a strength player than he is a bounty guy. And I don't think that you're looking at him as an anchor on defense at all. Like you kind of trust him as like a clean things up on the back end as opposed to like funnel everything towards me type of guy. Have him at 131 on my board right now. I could be talked up probably several, tens of spots depending on how things work. But there's no shooting promise there for me either. And he is very foul prone. So kind of all the negatives that you can have in a big man in the NBA, he seems to have. It's just that if you want to change a pace and you want to just like pick apart a team on the interior with your scoring, like trusting him to do a couple little post moves and counters, like he has that to his game. So maybe that's enough to kind of set him aside from the crowd. But there's just a lot of red flags for me defensively.
Mm-hmm. That's more than fair. Two guys that popped up in ESPN's most recent mock draft were Michael Casiedo and Montas Rubstavicius. I believe I'm getting that correctly. Montas he plays in Lithuania right now. 6 foot, both guys 6'6". Montas, more of a shooter, a guy who, relocates off the screens. He's got this really nice lefty stroke. In the Lithuanian league, they play in some really tough, just loud environments.
Yes.
But he's got size, he's got swag. Like he gets really fired up when he's hitting his shots. He changes direction well on offense. Conversely, not a great athlete, can be prone to getting back cut, not super balanced or fluid on defense. Whereas Casiedo, he's playing with Barcelona, really long limbs, really athletic. His shot does not fall at the same clip as Montas is, but he is confident with it. He'll pump fake and go into a sidestep and shoot it. Shades of passing, and a much better athlete. I think he's thinner and skinnier. I worry about him more from a physicality standpoint, and his handle can get away from him at times as well. Between Montas and Casiedo, do you have a preference out of either of them? Like, is there one that you like more than the other at this stage?
Yeah, I'm going to be super transparent and let folks know. I can't watch literally every prospect that's coming into this class. I will say that I have seen both of them, but I have definitely seen more Casiedo. I like him a lot, especially that shooting promise. So much I feel like that he can do. He kind of reminds me of like those kind of early 2000s combo 3-4 guys who stretches the floor enough to be a threat on the offensive end, but looks like he can support a little bit of weight and have some interior finishing to his game. And I think that could translate defensively. It's just that right now with the age and the defensive rotations, I don't like him as a defender right now, but I think that can certainly get better. But I like him as kind of like a floor spacing combo forward rebounder right now. Whereas for Montas, this is exactly like you said, the athleticism isn't there, but with his size and shooting promise, like again, there's room in the NBA for you to at least see a cup of coffee and see what else you got. But right now, I like Casiedo a lot more.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Casiedo is a guy I like crammed for this episode, but I came away really intrigued. Where with Montas, it's like he's every bit of that 6'6". Like it's the opposite of Zugic. Where like you cannot convince me those two guys are the same size. But yeah, I don't really know what else he's going to be able to do on a court. Another guy I want to touch on, just because this is a guy that I know that we've had conversations about over the years, is Malcolm Castellan.
Yeah.
Playing for Mega as well, along with Duricic. With Jovic out of the way, Castellan's kind of taken on a bulk of the playmaking. It's been kind of a weird journey for Castellan. Like he's been a guy who's been in the mix last couple drafts. For a while, it seemed like Willie just needs to shoot better. And then last year he did, but then he got hurt and he came back and he didn't shoot it better. So his hype kind of died down. He came back. This year, his passing looks a lot better at 6'6". He is really just slinging fastballs through tight windows, even if the assist numbers don't really prop it up. But he's an accurate passer, and he's hitting some tough shots off movement, but the 3-point percentage hasn't really been there. He's not a crazy athlete. But I do think that he's a smart defensive player that, like, when things get, I put on Twitter that he's one of the best gray area defenders in this draft. Like, when things get mucky and muddy and he needs to make a decision, he tends to outsmart the opposing team. But he's just not a crazy athlete at 6'6". And if you're not a crazy athlete and you can't shoot, it doesn't really matter how good the rest of your playmaking is if, like, you're not a guy who's going to really be able to create a whole lot. So where are you at on Castellan for this class? And, like, do you see it happening or no?
I have him in a range where I kind of have to, like, remove my own biases because, like you said, I've loved him the past 2 draft classes. I had him as a draftable player each year. And this year I'm like, all right, something's wrong with my draft process's mind right now. So I'm going to set you back and you're going to kind of have to prove it up to me again. I'm not just going to give you the benefit of the doubt. So I have him outside my 150 right now, but, like, just right there. And it comes down to shot consistency. It comes down to injury concerns, and it comes down to athleticism. Like, and as a guard, you can't have, many of those things, if at all, right? But if you have 3, that's not a good look. And again, I don't penalize for age or anything like that, but it's like, what are we not able to hear intel wise that a player that seemingly is as skilled as him isn't able to crack the draft like this many times? Because he's not a young man anymore. Like, he's a young man, but he's not like a kid anymore. He's like a grown up now. And so why is he not getting those types of opportunities for the league? Like, that's kind of like an area of concern that I don't know if I'm ever going to get the answer to, but it's in the recesses of my mind to consider.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point, because it just seems like every year I'm like, oh, I really like Castellan. I really like Castellan. And then, like, it just doesn't, like, the palpable buzz is never all the way there with him. And it's something different every year. Like, last year it was like passing consistency, and then, like, the shot dipped, and now this year the shot's dipping again. Like, I just want him to have an awesome year. Like, I just want to have the year where he hits the shots and it's like, look, he's 6'6". He may not be the best athlete, but he can make really good decisions. He knows how to defend, even if he's not the burstiest, and, like, he can carve out a bench role. Like, that's what I'm hoping for him. So hoping that this is the year for him. Any other, like, deep cut international guys that you're like, I think this could be a guy?
I mean, I have a list of them. I won't trouble the listeners for all of them, probably because I'm going to mispronounce a lot of them. But Zvonimir Ivicic, I think, is a very interesting big man. Augustin Ubal, Tristan Vukovic, Leonardo Okiki was a big buzz name last year.
Yeah. With Okiki, does he feel like, I feel like he's another guy where it's like, I need, like, one more thing. You know what I mean? Where it's like, he's really strong inside. I like his length on defense, but he doesn't feel, everything's off of 2 feet with him.
Yeah.
And, like, that kind of has me with some concern about what he does. And, like, the jump shot isn't there. Like, to me, he just feels like a guy who would have come out as, like, an interior power forward in, like, 2003. And everyone had been like, oh, this guy's pretty good. And, like, he would have been. But just, like, in the modern game, I'm just not sure what his fit is in the NBA. Like, he's gonna have a long, successful pro career wherever he is, but, like, I just don't see an NBA jump for him eminently.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I'm at too, because it looks like his post game is kind of like polishing up a little bit, but he just seems like the defensive fundamentals really gotta be sharp. I feel like he's one of those guys that will, like, literally jump for every pump fake, because he does have to come off of both feet. So if he is going to prepare to block a shot, he's not relying so much as a crazy athleticism as it is, trying to get up to meet that shot off of both feet. So I think the rebounding is there. Like, there are some interesting things about him. It's just that, again, in this, how deep this class is, he just kind of fell victim to the rest of the talent that's in this class. But yeah, I have a list of a few. Yannick Kreng's in there. Mian Jimenez, Ruben Dominguez. There's a few guys that I'm, like, really interested in for this international draft class.
Yeah, and I think it's worth remembering too. Like, it's the same as it is for college. Like, guys are going to fall and guys are going to shoot up. Like, you just never know who's all of a sudden going to really start to put it together. Cause like Carlo Makovich was the guy in the last class where it felt like it wasn't until 3 weeks before the draft. And all of a sudden everyone's like, whoa, like this guy can really play.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, yeah, he hears his name called on draft night. So it's important to remember that too. Like if we didn't mention a guy that you're into, let us know, because we'll check him out. And you never know how things are going to break down and unfold. So that covers this edition with the international player preview. We appreciate you guys joining us just on this entire journey of reviewing this whole class before the year even really gets going. And with these guys, they're already playing. A lot of these international leagues have already started up, but we appreciate you guys tuning in, joining us on this journey. We're excited to get Nathan back in the mix here soon as well. But Steven, where can people find you? And what have you been working on?
Well, yeah, and just kind of give people a heads up and a tease to what we're going to be doing here soon. I think that there's going to be like a draft deeper mock draft coming up very shortly.
That's the word on the streets. That's the word.
That's going to be pretty fun. And I think that there's going to be a fun stipulation that we're going to throw in there. So be sure that you're liking, sharing, subscribing, rating, and reviewing to draft deeper on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. But you can find me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active, at Steven G Hoops. Written work over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. By the time you're listening to this, it's probably already in your inbox. You need to go read it. It's my biggest questions for the top 30 prospects based on our No Ceilings collective composite board. And I went through and asked my biggest area of concern for the most talented to some of the guys that if a few things hit, they might come screaming up your big board. And then I also, little bonus plug in there, I put 20 prospects that I'm like really interested in keeping tabs on throughout the year, because there probably going to be some high risers coming from that list of prospects. So stay ahead of the curve, read that. I know Nathan's going to have a piece by the time you're listening to this on Monday too, where he's asking questions, but it's in regards to the college basketball season that is kicking off today. Can't be more excited than more and more basketball to get to evaluate this year, Maxwell.
Yeah, make sure you check out Steven's column. This was thorough, really in depth. I really enjoyed it. And of course, love that list at the end. Love seeing my guy Tyson Dagenhart pop up on there.
Yeah.
You know, I had to sneak a Boise State game onto my schedule for the first week of the season. So yeah, love that list, but just love the entire piece as a whole. Super in depth. Brother. And if you're somebody else too, who's like just starting to get in, you're seeing, hey, this is the first week of college basketball. I'm just getting in here. I want to learn about the guys in this draft. Steven's article is a must read, goes through a lot of guys with first round expectations. So make sure you're checking that out. I'm on Twitter at Boundboards, at BAUM, then the word boards. I've got a piece coming out on Tuesday where I'm going to be covering 5 players that you shouldn't give up on yet. So 5 prospects that have really kind of been overlooked. Their names in the mud a little bit in some cases. Sometimes it's just guys that have been hurt. But we've seen with guys like Javonte Green, with players like Anthony Parker back in the day, with players like PJ Tucker,
good reach.
guys that either made
Patrick
it to the
Beverly.
NBA and then people gave up on, or guys that just, in Javonte's case, never got the shot. Like it was just like, this guy's not an NBA player because he played at a small school and couldn't shoot and was 6'4". Like we write guys off all the time after they've proven themselves quite a bit. So it seems silly to write off guys that, 2 years ago, we're like, hey, this guy might be in the draft this year, and they weren't, and they're not done yet. So talking about 5 guys that I think still have a shot. I'm not wild about them, but I think they all have a real shot to play in the NBA. So fun column there, and then some quick hits and big board stuff.
Can't wait to check that out, man. That's going to be a fun read. I know that you're going to bring some good names to the table. I can't wait to check that out.
They're fun. There's some real interesting players in there. So make sure to check that out. But yeah, otherwise, make sure you are subscribed to the Substack, NoCeilingsNBA.com, to this podcast feed, rate and review. And as always, thank you to producer Kevin Black. Nathan, can't wait to have you back soon.
Miss you, buddy.
So until next time, have a good night. Peace.